So who's ready to get fucked up and make some bad decisions? Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with Bride of Re-Animator. Because apparently I haven't been down enough in the dumps lately and have to, make myself feel bad again. Back in July of last year, we reacted to the first Re-Animator movie, and it broke me. It upset me quite a bit. If you want to know all of the reasons why, just go check out that video. But since I reacted to that, I have been putting off continuing with this series of movies. And it's been quite a bit of time since then. It's been over half a year. I think I should just buckle down and get to this. Might just be the best decision I can make here. Whew. Excuse me. So, we're doing it. We're getting to the second movie, which is Bride of Re-Animator. I assume is a reference to Bride of Frankenstein and everything. I kind of get the idea with that. But it's like, I have no idea if this movie's going to be as upsetting as the first. And really, if you remember, it was really only like the end of the movie that really upset me last time. Most of the rest of it was fine. It's just like, it was really just the end, but... and where things kind of suddenly escalated to. But yeah. I don't know if this is going to be as bad as that, even if just, again, at the end. If this is going to be better than that, or if this is just going to do something completely different. Bride of Re-Animator does not really give good vibes as a title, especially with how the last one ended. Because it makes me think that, oh, she's just going to be brought back, and, fucky shit with that's going to happen. I don't remember if she did come back at the end or not. I actually don't remember. I remember she died. Did she come back? Hold on, I feel like I have to check. This is just a recap for myself, for something that I have already watched. So, I don't count this as, like, spoilers or anything, obviously. Because I've already seen the movie. Okay, let me see. I'll just check the, Wikipedia. Oh yeah, this is a cult film. That's interesting. Oh yeah, it's implied that she came back. Because, she was killed by one of the reanimated corpses, strangled to death, which is part of what upset me so much last time. And then Dan injected her with the serum stuff. And after the screen faded to black, she can be heard screaming. So it's kind of implied that she was brought back. So I'm assuming that that is something to do with this movie then? With the entire Bride of Re-Animator thing? Unless this just takes a completely different turn and is like, a completely different story. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But yeah. This should be This should be a trip either way. Maybe because of the fact that I am expecting something to upset me, maybe that'll help. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Um, Maybe that'll help, but it also might not do anything. I'm trying to prolong these pre-thoughts as much as I can. I don't even know how long this movie is, actually. It's about an hour and a half. Um, but yeah, it's like I'm just, concerned because when movies upset me like that one did, it's like it it bothers me to continue watching the series. And by no means am I like trying to say like I'm against continuing watching the series. Obviously, I'm not. I'm here right now about to react to this next one. But at the same time, it's like I'm just afraid to continue reacting because I don't like feeling upset. But I mean, I feel like that's kind of the point. I feel like that's kind of like what you're supposed to feel with this. You're not supposed to like what happened to her. Like, I'd be really fucking worried about you if you did. But that doesn't make it any less ewy and upsetting. So it's like it's one of those weird situations where it's like you understand that it's what they're going for, but it still bothers you. You know? Let's just get into it. If I keep stalling like this, it's just gonna, drag this out even further and just make it more anxiety inducing. Let's just get into this. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the movie. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, this movie wasn't as upsetting as the first one, I will say that. And I think part of the reason is because the, main girl, Francesca, survived in the end. And Dan, I hope, has finally come to his senses and rejected all of West's bullshit. But, it kind of seemed like it was that way in the first film, and then he came back in this one and was, like, working with him for 8 months after everything that had happened, so who the fuck knows? Obviously, don't tell me, because there is a third film in this series. And that's definitely part of the reason, though there is still a lot about it that's upsetting. Like the way that Dan was so quick to use Meg's heart to try and create this bride, and on top of that, using Gloria's head. I did catch, by the way, the only healthy part of her, so that's why specifically her head was used. I understood that right away. And on top of that, like, just all these other pieces, and then there's like just all these other zombies, I think, from that were from the last one. Obviously, the crazed rapist doctor from the last one. That's another thing, by the way, that made this not as upsetting as the first one. The first one had a much more graphic rape scene. In this one, there was a very short scene where the police officer was assaulting Francesca. It was very brief, but he was feeling all up on her. It was, and then at the end, he almost did so again, even saying his wife wouldn't mind. But then, she popped in and was basically like, fuck that, I do mind. Of course, it's also revealed he killed his wife in the first place through domestic assault, which, considering all of the crimes and insanity he like perpetuated in this, doesn't surprise me. It's like dude was like, absolute piece of fucking shit. Even before he was reanimated. And why did they have to bring back the head of the one guy, Hill, I think his name is? Why did they have to bring his head back? Why? Like, we didn't get enough of him in the first movie? There was no reason to bring him back. And then at the end, when all this insanity's happening, there's all these other experiments that we had not seen before that West had created. Like the one that's basically like, it looked like a male body and a female body stitched together via the back. And it's like, what? I understand that it implies that he's been doing a lot more of these experiments than Dan knew and that we knew, and it makes sense for his character. But it's just like, I feel like it was just for shock. It didn't feel like naturally integrated in, or like this natural reveal that there was all these other experiments he had been doing. It felt like it was just, again, added in for shock value, which I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of. I mean, I can get behind some things having like shock value in them. There's definitely an appeal with that to some degree, but it has to be executed well. And I feel like it just kind of got in the way here. And speaking of that, it took way too fucking long to get to the actual Bride of Re-Animator stuff. Most of this movie was like focused on other shit. And there was a lot of it that was just like, oh, we're just gonna focus on this shit that happened last time. Which, I mean, I get it's a sequel. It has to some degree, like, continue from the last movie. But it's like the bride only coming in, like, what, the last 10-15 minutes of the film is, like, really underwhelming. And it felt like, for, I would say, the first 2/3 of the movie, the bride wasn't even, like, well built up to. It's like only in the last third of the film I felt like it's like, okay, we're actually getting to the stuff about the bride, which this is named for. I feel like it would have just made more sense to just call this Re-Animator 2. By naming it the Bride of Re-Animator, you're creating this expectation that the movie's going to be about that as the focus. And it's not. Like, that's very much not the focus. That's just another experiment that they did. Honestly, it has no more relevance in this than Dr. Hillbat did. That had just as much relevance in this film. Also, by the way, Dr. Graves just kind of disappeared after a point. It's like, oh, he got locked in the in the storage after being forced to, stitch the bat wings onto Dr. Hill's head. He never returns after that. We don't even know if he got out. It's never, like, there's no conclusion to that at all. And Dr. Hill's head, by the way, at the end is just kind of there, trapped in the rubble, but still alive. It's like, okay. And is that supposed to be like setting up that he could return next time? But it also shows Dr. West being completely covered in fallen rubble and stuff. It's like, how we're just supposed to assume that he's going to get out of there and be back for the next one? Because that very much seems like he's probably dead. But I almost kind of have to assume he's going to be back somehow. I feel like it's going to probably just reset the status quo again and have it be like, oh, a year later, he and Dan are on more of their wacky experiments. Again, do not tell me, by the way. No spoilers. But, yeah. It very much, like, presented it as if he were dead. So the idea of him returning at this point would also just kind of feel like ridiculous. And I kind of understand that there's supposed to be a little bit of a black comedy spin to these movies, that it's supposed to be so wacky, so crazy, so ridiculous that it's entertaining to watch. And there's certain aspects of it that do bring entertainment. For one, I love the effects. The effects are great. You can tell there was a lot of work put into them. And I think that they work. It's the story and the characters that really bug me about these movies. And I think part of the reason is because both the last movie and now this movie have one likable character in each one. The first movie, it was Megan, and she died. This movie is Francesca. She survived. And it's like, they're the only ones I'm, like, rooting for the entire time. Like, I mean, I guess Gloria was kind of likable in this, but she wasn't really much of a character. She had such a minor role until, like, her head became the head of the bride. It's like, there really wasn't enough to her to form an opinion, really. Francesca had much more of an actual character to her. And I kind of feel like including both of them felt weirdly needless. Like, why do we have to give Dan two separate love interests in this? But never really acknowledge it? Like, because he sleeps with Francesca. Like, they full on fuck. They're lying in bed, he's rubbing on her tit and everything. But it's also made excessively clear that he had a massive crush on Gloria, and even likened her to Meg. But, like, outside of the fact that, you know, Gloria and the bride, I should say, and Francesca, like, have a little spat at the end, it's like nothing ever actually comes of the fact that he's, you know, kind of crushing on two women at once, and ends up using one for an extremely unethical, evil experiment after her death, which, by the way, still comes out of complete nowhere. Like, there was no reason to believe she was going to die there. It just happened. It was basically convenience, contrivance even, for the sake of the plot. But yeah, having her and Francesca just felt completely pointless, honestly. I just didn't get the point of having both of them. And then the fact that these two just got away with everything from the last movie, and it's just like, oh, 8 months later, they're in Peru doing all this work, and then they come back to America again, come back to Arkham, and are just doing the same shit again at the same hospital. It's like, I'm sorry, but that would not be happening. Like, even if no one was able to prove that they were behind anything, these two would not just be back up and working at this hospital 8 months later. That just would not be happening. Like, no. The hospital itself would be back up and running, but these two would not be there. After that incident, they were too closely tied to it. Again, they found Dan sitting there cradling Meg's dead body, which was twitching uncontrollably and everything. And there was very clearly said to be like suspicion there. It's like they would not they would not be allowed to work there. Absolutely not. This movie just kind of ignores logic half the time. And it's like I can understand, like, okay, the cop is like breaking into this house and all. It's like, yeah, he's breaking the law and being terrible, but that's literally supposed to be part of his character. I can understand that. He's just a terrible piece of shit. Yeah, he's breaking the law by doing all of this. But that's not the same thing as like ignoring other logics that just would not be happening. Again, those bat wings would not be able to lift that head. Like, and don't give me the excuse that, oh, the reagent gives you like super strength and shit as well. I don't really think there's any evidence of that. It basically zombifies you and unlocks, like, I guess the full potential of your physical strength by basically breaking down the natural mental barriers that you have that limit it. Humans naturally have limiters that stop them from engaging in their full strength because it would poorly affect our body, let's just say. Broken bones and everything like that. Our brains limit how much strength we use, even if subconsciously. Because otherwise, again, it would fuck up our bodies. It's a safety measure. But the idea of zombies, and this is the case for a lot of zombie media, is that they don't have those limits. That's why zombies are surprisingly strong a lot of the time, especially freshly created zombies who are just human, because they don't have those limiters stopping them from utilizing their full strength. They will go all out. Now, it doesn't always make sense when you have, like, zombies risen from the grave who have been dead for years and years and have deteriorated and all. I agree with that. But for, like, again, fresh people who had just died and been bitten or scratched by zombies, whichever lore you're going with, and or scratched, I guess. It's like, yeah, they would have a certain level of strength that would be surprising and even overpowering. But just using kind of the excuse that they're supernatural and everything is not, I don't think it's a really reasonable excuse. And trying to, like, say that the serum gives it despite never really, like, giving any real evidence of that, it's just, there's certain things that I just don't buy into. Let's just put it that way. There's just certain aspects of this I just can't buy into. Because the movies make nothing clear as to how that could be bought into. The acting was mostly okay. I mean, it was super cheesy. And some actors, let's be honest, were not that great. Francesca and the police lieutenant were not really good. Francesca, let's be honest, she was cutesy and everything, but the actress was not doing a great job. I mean, no, like, insult against her necessarily. There could be a lot of reasons for that. It could be direction. It could be maybe this is a early role for her and she hasn't had that much experience. I'm not going to, like, blame her and hate on her for it, but the performance wasn't good. It wasn't believable. She didn't feel like a real person. She felt like a caricature. And the police detective, same thing. He didn't feel like a real person. He felt like a caricature of a corrupt, gross, terrible piece of shit police officer. And it was throwing me off a lot of the movie because the acting was just, it wasn't believable. I didn't believe like anything. And it's like Dan and West were the probably the better ones in this. And there were some like just minor random side characters like thrown in, like some of the nurses and all were fine. Um and I actually think Gloria's actress did a fair job for what she was supposed to be doing, how her character was supposed to be played. Even if she didn't, have enough screen time to really have much of a character. But yeah, it's like I also feel like the other Doctor Graves, he was okay. The only problem is he also had very little screen time and felt like a throwaway character. Like, what was the point of him? And part of that is the fact that there was no resolution to him in the end. He just ends up getting locked into storage and we never see him again. So it's like, I feel like the movie just was not super well handled in a lot of ways. Like they wanted to rely too much on the fact that this is a sequel to the first one, but it made the entire like titular plot of it with the bride kind of be pushed to the side for the very end, and it's just it's disappointing, you know. I feel like that problem could have been resolved easily too by having the bride plot be the driving factor the entire film. Have it so that's known to be what they're trying to do the entire time. That's all you needed to do. It basically would have taken like a single line of dialogue, and you could have fixed that issue. And I'm not probably the right person to like say whether or not this lived up to the first film, considering the first film wasn't necessarily my cup of tea in the first place. It was just upsetting to me. um, but it's like I feel like the first movie was more focused and had more of an identity. This one feels like it's just a cash grab, a sequel to cash grab on the somewhat popularity of the first movie, even if that popularity came after the movie's initial release. So, yeah, it didn't feel like it was properly handled. It could have been done better. There's certain aspects to it that I was okay with. And again, the effects were great. I think that was honestly the best part of this movie. But maybe the third one will turn me around on this trilogy. Maybe it'll be just a lot better than these first two. And I guess there is somewhat of a possibility because I believe the next one came out like 13 years after this one did. Something like that. So, I briefly had looked at like the years that these came out. I believe it was about 13 years. So maybe within that period of time, they were able to like really get the script and everything down and make it work. I don't know. We'll see at some point in the future. I don't know exactly when we'll get to it. But like I said, do not spoil me on anything for the final film in this trilogy. I will experience that when we get to that. For the time being, though, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you have any thoughts, let me know down below. And also, I think I never really mentioned that this was a a donation reward for Venom, just like the first movie was. But yeah, I apologize for like not mentioning that before. But yeah, donation reward for Venom. Uh, though I think most people who watch the channel could have guessed that because most movie reactions are donation rewards for Venom. Um, but yeah, thank you, Venom, as always. And yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.